Hereby call to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, November 6th, 2023. The roll call will stand as called for the EDA meeting just prior to this. Our start time is approximately 6:31 p.m. However, we do have a little bit of a change here at the desk. We do have, instead of our EDA attorney, we have our city attorney, Rachel Tierney, who had a cameo role in the EDA meeting earlier, but now has a starring role as with us this evening. And once again, we'll have various staff and other guests participating in the meeting as the meeting goes on, and we'll introduce those folks as the items come up. Once again, if you do have a cell phone, make sure it's silenced or otherwise does not disrupt the meeting. We will forego the Pledge of Allegiance because we took care of that during the EDA meeting earlier. We do have to approve the agenda for the council meeting, and I understand from staff there are some changes, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and Council, I'd like to request 2 items be removed from any consideration tonight on the agenda. The first item is item 7B, which is an abatement at 167 Weavers Road. The items that were in conflict with the code have been picked up from the edge of the driveway, have been placed in a dumpster, and that dumpster will be moved from the property in the next couple of days. Therefore, we will not need to take any further action tonight on that particular property. And the second item is 7G, which is to consider amendments to city code regarding sewer and water collections. I'd like to have that removed so we can continue working on the ordinance. There's some very specific references to interest rates and certification fees that probably better belong into the fee schedule. So I want to rework that wording a little bit and just take a look at the public hearing requirements. So I would intend to bring that forward in November 27th meeting, but instead of trying to sort that out tonight, we'll just bring back a fresh copy and start again. So those 2 items, items 7B and 7G, take off the agenda for any consideration.
All right, are there any changes that council members would request to tonight's agenda, or items council members would like to remove from the consent agenda for separate consideration? Hearing none, we'll do a check with members of the public. This is in relation to our consent agenda, which starts at the bottom of page 1 of the agenda, item or section 10, items A through O this evening, several items. Normally, these items are taken up as a single motion at the end of the meeting after everything else, with limited opportunity for discussion and input because it's considered fairly administrative and ministerial type items at that point. But certainly if somebody is here this evening and wishes to either ask a question or make a comment on one of those items in section 10 of the agenda this evening, we do want to provide an opportunity at the start of the meeting to find out, and we'll take up that item earlier in the meeting so that you don't have to sit through the rest of it. So we'll just check with folks if anyone is here for an item in section 10 of tonight's agenda. This would be the opportunity to let us know that you are, and we'll make sure and take up that item earlier in the meeting. The business items in section 7 earlier in the agenda will be taken up in order and will be earlier in the meeting. I know there are probably several people for one or more of those business items. Doesn't appear we have anybody for one of the items in section 10, so with that, we do have the 2 requested changes to remove items 7B and 7G from the business items from staff. Is there a motion then to approve the agenda with those changes?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder to approve the agenda without items 7B and 7G. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have our agenda for this evening. Next on our agenda is general public comment, and this is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to items that are not on tonight's agenda, but may be related to city business or of interest to people in the community. Once again, items that we're taking up on the agenda this evening will have an opportunity for public comment as those items happen. But at each meeting, we do start with an opportunity for people to speak to general items to the City Council, either to ask questions or make comments. Is anyone here this evening for general public comment? Does not appear to be the case, and I would note that we did have some Cub Scouts here this evening, and I didn't get the troop number, but they were here to learn more about government, but they also had a curfew on their attendance, so they weren't able to stay to the point when we could have recognized them, so we'll just have to acknowledge their presence and know that they contributed mightily to our meeting before they left, and as far as the public knows, and appreciate their interest in government and looking into what we do here at the council. With that, with hearing no other public comment, we'll move then to our business items since we don't have any other items in the next several sections of the agenda. That brings us then to our first business item, which is item 7A, 7A is to hold a public hearing to consider approving the transfer of a liquor license as outlined in the packet. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon for this item. Mr. Trudgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we're here tonight to have a public hearing to consider the transfer of a liquor license for ZL Eats LLC doing business at Sichuan, located at 2193 Snelling Avenue. As I mentioned, we have received an application to transfer that license to Z and Ling Wang, which will represent the company. Formal application has been submitted for an on-sale wine and a 3-2 liquor license. Now, as part of the background investigation, it was learned that there is a business and familial connection between the applicant and the previous license holder, Jesse Wong. And I only bring this forward because, as you recall, in August, Sichuan did fail in the compliance check and did serve to a minor. And this is the second time within 36 months. So the council did impose a $2,000 fine, which has been paid, and also issued a 5-day suspension from selling any liquor. That has not been served yet. So in consideration of this transfer license, staff and the city attorney believe the relationship does constitute a transfer instead of a brand new existing or brand new business entity. Therefore, we request as part of this approval that the council consider carrying over the license to Sichuan. So as we keep track of any potential future violations, they'll be further down the chart as far as violations within 36 months, and also serve the 5-day suspension, and that would be the new entity, the ZL Eats LLC, once that liquor license is issued. They have submitted all the other material and have paid their fees, and they are eligible for issuance, but as I said, we would like to issue that with the condition of that the previous history be considered moving forward, and the 5-day suspension is served by the new owners.
All right. Or by the new license holder?
Yeah, license holder, yes.
Right. And is there a representative of the license applicant this evening with us? Doesn't appear to be the case. We do always want to provide an opportunity for the applicant to speak toward their application. Are there questions from the council for staff on this proposed license transfer and some of the conditions outlined by staff? Councilmember Groff.
So if we carry that over, do we have any problem enforcing that on the new license holder?
We have,
The fine or the suspension?
so as I said, the fine has been paid by the previous owner, so
Okay.
the fine has been taken care of. The suspension, just from the practical of scheduling, it hasn't even had a chance to be scheduled, but since this transfer is occurring, we have let the new license holder that this would have to be served under their license. We did speak at length with the city attorney to make sure this is something that was appropriate for us to do, and she indicated that it was. And so everybody's aware that this is part of the process here, and as a condition of the license, that's what we were proposing to the city council.
Makes sense, thanks.
Any other questions? And just to clarify also, so the transfer is not starting a new 36-month clock on violations. So that potentially, if within that same 36-month period, another violation happens as a result of a compliance check effort, that would count as their third violation within the 36-month period. And is there anything in the documentation that we're doing with the transferee as to knowing that that's part of the scenario? Or is it just communicated via a letter or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's part of the letter. When we issue that, we'll communicate that. And we've previously communicated that, but we'll use this as a record as well as when we communicate in issuing that license that this is under the conditions. So very specific letter that we would
Appreciate that.
draft in this case.
All right, other questions? If not, this is a public hearing, so we'll open up the public hearing on this requested license transfer as described. If anyone from the public wishes to speak to this requested transfer, this would be the time to do so. For public comment purposes, we do have the 2 microphones at the table, and we do provide an opportunity for each speaker to speak up to 3 minutes. And I try to be generous and gentle in my enforcement of that, but we certainly don't want people abusing it. Every speaker gets 1 opportunity to speak per public comment opportunity. There aren't follow-ups. And also we ask that any public comments be directed to the City Council or any questions, and then the Council will either respond to questions after the entire period of public comment by commenters, or provide any feedback through our council discussion of our deliberation of any item. Is there anyone this evening at this time wishing to speak to this license transfer of this liquor license as outlined. All right, seeing no one come forward, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and move to council consideration. Deliberation from the council. Is there a motion regarding this transfer?
Here, I move approval of the transfer to ZL Eats LLC as well as the ordering of the 5-day suspension once the license is issued.
Second.
All right, that's been moved by Councilmember Atten, seconded by Councilmember Strawn. Discussion on the motion as the maker, Councilmember Atten.
Appreciate the work staff did to kind of find these close connections, and I think this is a very appropriate action.
And this the seconder, Councilmember Strawn.
I concur, and I just think it's important that it's not an easy way for people to get out of that by transferring it to someone else in their family or someone else in close connection. So it may seem a little bit unfair to some, but I think it's really important that someone's held accountable, especially when we're trying so hard to keep our license failures to a minimum, and we've continued to struggle with that.
Right, any other discussion on the motion? I definitely would concur. That was what I would have said, but you've taken care of that for me, so appreciate that. With that, we've got the motion before us, as noted, to approve the transfer and also the imposition of the 5-day suspension as described. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that transfer is approved, subject to the discussion. With that, then, we don't have item 7B on the agenda this evening. That was removed earlier. That brings us to item 7C, which is another hearing. This is a public improvement hearing related to the County Road B reconstruction project. Just had a mental lapse here. Jennifer Lowry is with us to give us the information to introduce us. I recovered nicely. Hopefully nobody noticed. Oops, was that out loud? Anyway, with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer to
All right.
introduce this item in this hearing, and then we'll go through the formality of the hearing.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I have a brief presentation. It is similar to the one that was given to our commission at their last meeting last month, that hopefully will address a lot of the questions ahead of time, but then can field more questions. So again, Jennifer Lowry, city engineer. We have our reconstruction of County Road B. I'm just going to briefly talk through the history, the project scope, and the location, what we've done for engagement to date, the design elements, and the ones that especially have been debated throughout the preliminary design, the project costs, project funding, and our recommended council actions. So the road itself, we're talking about County Road B west of Cleveland, was constructed in 1950 and last paved in 2007. Following the 2007 collapse of the 35W bridge, MnDOT closed this access from 280 to County Road B. So this segment was then determined to serve a local function only and not meet County Road standards, so it was turned back to the city. So we're the proud owners as of August 2014, and as with other county turnbacks, the city added this to our municipal state aid system for the segment from Cleveland to Fulham in 2021. So that segment can utilize our municipal state aid funds. So the reconstruction portion is highlighted in red. It's about 0.8 of a mile, and a feasibility report was prepared and provided to you on the October 23rd, and in tonight's packets. The proposed project includes a full depth reconditioning of the street. The construction of a pathway consistent with the city's comprehensive and pathway master plans and some public utility improvements. It is anticipated that if this improvement is approved, the work will start in the spring of '24 and be completed by the fall. Construction will be coordinated with our pavement management program, which is mill and overlay of the streets shown in the purple dots on this map as well. The purple dots do not include assessments. The corridor existing today has a right-of-way of about 66 to 86 feet. With our reconstruction, we only anticipate some temporary construction easements to match in the grading, et cetera, not to acquire permanent right-of-way. The pavement itself is 32 to 40 feet wide, and that includes 14-foot drive lanes in each direction and an 8-foot paved path. So we're calling this roughly 36 feet of existing pavement, and there's no curb. Our proposed is the section on the bottom. We're proposing a 25-foot wide road, which is curb face to curb face. 6-foot grass boulevard where possible to separate a new 8-foot bituminous path from the roadway. So what we're looking at is roughly 39 feet from outside curb to outside of the pathway compared to the existing 36 feet of pavement today. No parking would be proposed except for at 4 parking bays, and no medians are proposed except for at Cleveland. So these are the design elements that are discussed in the feasibility section or study. I will touch on a lot of these. Note that the items shown in red italics are the ones that were most debated during the preliminary design. So that includes the location of an off-road pathway, the presence and location of parking, redesign of the Fulham Street intersection with County B, and the presence of medians. First, I'll start with public engagement. So to date, we have held 4 neighborhood meetings and 1 mail survey since 2021. We've received over 150 public comments throughout the process at meetings, calls, emails, etc. Our first meeting was held via Zoom in June of 21, where residents provided input regarding neighborhood concerns along the corridor. Among attendees were 48 accounts signed into the Zoom meeting. Okay, I'll get a hang of it. Nope. Okay. So following up on conversations from that first meeting, we mailed out a parking survey to residents along County Road B and the adjacent neighborhoods to gauge the need for parking. Of the 44 respondents, they were kind of in a 3-way split. So green prefers one side of parking, yellow is some parking areas, and blue is no parking. However, note that this means 66% of those responding wanted some sort of parking on County Road B. Please be aware that today parking is allowed on both sides of County Road B and not along narrower cross streets such as Acorn or Eustis. In addition, we've heard a lot about speeding concerns. So at the second meeting, staff showed residents 4 proposed street sections, which I'll talk about in a bit, the parking survey results, and some of the speed count information you see up here. Attendees from 6 addresses signed in at the meeting, but I want to note that it was outside and apparently very windy, so we believe over 30 attended. The city performed a speed study and collected data on the corridor. What it shows here is that the 85th percentile is 35.9 in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. So the 85th percentile is the speed at which 85% of drivers are traveling at or below. The fact that the 85th percentile is more than 5 miles an hour above the speed limit indicates that traffic calming may be appropriate here. I would like to point that over the 5-day study, there were a handful going about 60. On the exhibit at the meeting, it also pointed out some ways to slow speeds for discussion. So narrowing the roadway, which is being proposed, some kind of neighborhood entrance to indicate that it's different than the corridor to the east, and visual cues such as medians. The 4 layouts at the meeting, all 4 showed option A with variations. So 12-foot drive lanes, 6-foot boulevard, and an 8-foot path, similar to what we're proposing today. Option A had the trail crossing from the north to the south side at St. Croix. Option B showed the same thing, but added a few 7-foot parking bays. Option C showed some medians throughout the corridor. And option D was the same as option A, except it had no curb on the south side. The third meeting was August 22nd. There were 19 addresses signed in at the meeting. Staff presented 2 layouts, which were variations of the previous ones discussed. Again, we had the 12-foot drive lanes, the 6-foot boulevard, and 8-foot path. But then the variations among the 2 layouts, and some of these weren't mutually exclusive, so it wasn't like vote for one layout. There were modified locations for those 7-foot parking bays. There was a version with and without the center median at various locations along the corridor. The path switched from the south to the north side either at Fulham or at St. Croix. And also Fulham Street south of County Road B was shown shifted east. We continue to see a mix of support on the debated design elements. So the posts that you see here say, don't need green medians on road, only at entrance to County Road B, wide parking here, and keep both medians and some parking. Our fourth meeting was recently held on October 12th. We presented layouts, the recommended layout that's before you today, the project's next step, schedule and assessment process. So over 62 people signed in at that meeting, but it appeared attendance was closer to 80. So just to kind of run through some of the not as debated design items. So like I said, 25 feet face-to-face, curb and gutter is proposed throughout the corridor. And we may have some curb cuts to potentially feed rain gardens. Some residents have asked for them. Stormwater runoff will be captured by the new curb and gutter and routed into existing and new storm sewer. We propose drain tile or storm sewer to be added to drain existing low spots as needed. Water main, full replacement of the water main is not proposed. However, we will be doing some adjustments on structures and hydrants, etc. And we may be making a new water main connection down by the service drive of Cleveland. Sanitary sewer, similarly, we will be adjusting some structures with the project. We do intend to line the sanitary sewer mains in advance of the project. Private utilities, we have notified private utilities of the work, and it is their responsibility to relocate for this project. We've also said at the meetings with the public that we will not be doing private sewer work with this project, which is a change from previous projects. Driveways, as a part of the plan preparation, we'll review the size, location, and material of driveways in an effort to bring them into conformance with city code. This basically means that to ensure that driveways aren't wider than 26 feet within the right-of-way. On a quick review, I don't see this as being a problem on this corridor, but staff will continue to work with residents to provide final designs that minimize impacts to existing driveways and minimize storm water runoff in the detailed design. Final bullet here is trees. Conveniently, the Parks Department has completed their city tree citywide inventory. So we'll be working with them on what trees are impacted and or slated for removal as a part of this project. And in detailed design, we'll get more into the 3D design to narrow that down. All right. So the juicier design elements, I guess. An 8-foot wide bituminous path is proposed on the south side of the county road east of Fulham and on the north side of the county road west of Fulham. We debated the path crossing from the north to the south, either at St. Croix or at Fulham, like I had mentioned. You can see the middle picture up in the top shows older layouts that had it cross just east of Fulham. The one on the upper right shows it crossing at St. Croix. Residents prefer different options. Generally, residents along the corridor west of Fulham typically preferred having the path on the opposite side of the road than their property. The recommended layout proposes to have the path along the west leg, cross along the west leg of the intersection of County Road and Fulham. So on the bottom, you can see that crossing just west of Fulham. And a new 4-way stop is proposed at Fulham to provide a safer crossing than at the uncontrolled crossing that would be at St. Croix. Overall, staff believes that the recommended pathway location is the safest location. Next topic would be parking bays. Note that, again, that parking will not be allowed on the new County Road B except for in the parking bays. Parking is also not allowed on Acorn or Eustis. As previously shown in the parking survey, over 60% of respondents wanted parking. However, not surprisingly, again, nobody seems to want it adjacent to their property. Since a reconstruction of a road is typically a 50-year decision and the design should not be completely driven by an individual property owner, staff has tried to balance feedback from residents where parking is allowed on side streets and the distance from a side street. We have proposed 3 locations along the corridor in addition to in front of the new park. The parking bay proposed at the new park is designed to hold 6 cars. 3 other locations, as you can see here, numbered 2, 3, and 4, are each proposed to hold 3. Regarding the park on the west end of the project, I also want to acknowledge that we have and will continue to work with the Park and Rec Department to coordinate construction of the park with our project. Road realignment. So first, to talk about County Road B in and of itself, like I mentioned, the new proposed road from outside curb to outside trail is 39.5. The existing paved surface is roughly 36. So from the middle layout, you can see that our impacts were kind of off-centered to the north of the current B alignment. And then you'll see our current alignment on the right, where it kind of keeps it within that existing pavement. So there are some slight undulations of the center line if you were looking straight down the road. Another debated design element was a realignment of the south leg of Fulham, so you can see in the far left picture. Today, Fulham, south of B, is offset within the existing right-of-way to the west, and offset from Fulham to the north. So if you drive across the intersection, it'd be an offset intersection. Realignment of the southern leg was considered to provide safety improvements, as offset intersections are inherently less safe. There was substantial pushback from the Midland Hills Golf Course and various residents, as the realignment would cause a cascade of impacts to the golf course and increase construction costs. Staff is no longer pursuing the realignment due in part to those impacts, but more because there's a very low crash history there, a minimal number of movements that actually cross B from one leg to the other. And with the safety improvement proposed with our new 4-way stop, the benefits of realigning Fulham are minimal. As far as traffic management, narrowing the roadway is anticipated to reduce driver speeds. Medians were discussed as an option in prior meetings, but they provide nominal traffic calming, especially when compared to their added construction costs and additional required maintenance efforts indefinitely. Oops. The only median, I just got to get used to the arrows. The only median proposed is a short median at Cleveland that will still provide full access to the Cleveland service drive. And that'll help alert drivers as they're coming from the east that this corridor is changing at that location. Additionally, the proposed 4-way stop at Fulham, although not a traffic calming device, will reinforce that pedestrians have right-of-way when crossing the street and provide for a safer crossing. We will not be reconstructing the signalized intersection at Cleveland. Like I mentioned, a similar presentation and layout were presented to our commission on October 24th. They did support the staff recommended layout. To quickly touch on the estimated project costs and project funding, you'll see that an estimated project cost of roughly $2 million, of which $1.25 million is the street construction of it in and of itself. The public hearing is for the assessments. The assessments are only for the street construction costs. So as far as overall funding, you'll see the project is funded with MSA funds because a portion of it is MSA. Street funds, which will pay for the remainder of the street and the pathway, are various utility funds, and then estimated at $166,000 for the assessments. Note that this is 13% roughly of the street construction costs. So we haven't done an assessment since I think 7 years ago. So I just wanted a quick talk through that and hopefully make it less confusing, not more confusing. So this is using the adopted special assessment policy that was last approved in 2012. We use this to calculate the preliminary assessment rule that's shown in the back of the feasibility report. The estimated costs, like I said, are for the street reconstruction only, which is currently at $1.25 million estimated. That dollar amount was divided by the total frontage along the corridor to establish what the 100%, the 50%, and the 25% assessment rates would be. Per the policy, residential lots are assessed at 25% and all other zoning is assessed at the 50%. So that's how we establish the unit rate. Then we need to establish what footage to apply that to. So to calculate the accessible footage, or what footage to apply that to, we establish the accessible footage in typical lots that accessible footage is 100% of the footage adjacent to County Road B. For corner lots, it's either 10% if it's the long side of the lot, or it's 100% if it's a short side of the lot. So that would be, if you're a corner lot, you would get assessed if a project was on one side and if a project was on the other, but you wouldn't be assessed 100% for both. Note that the calculation does not matter how the home is addressed, where the driveway is accessed, or if a home is even built on that site at all. Finally, per the policy, the calculated assessment is compared to the special benefit. So earlier this year, the city had an outside consultant perform a special benefit opinion for the residential properties. This opinion only considered the increased value to a parcel of land as a result of the street reconstruction. It did not account for the other public improvements because they are not being assessed, nor does it consider the specifics of any building on a parcel of the land. It's just talking about the increased value to that land itself. If the calculated assessment was higher than the special benefit opinion, the assessment roll lists the special benefit opinion. So we won't assess higher than what their special benefit would be. Assuming this project is completed next fall, the final assessment would be determined following an assessment hearing in late 2024 or early 2025, and through a review of the proposed assessments by City Council. So there are processes to request payment deferment on assessments or to object the assessments, and those would all occur later at that time of the final assessment hearing. Assessments would likely be levied in 2026 and are proposed to be payable over 10 years. So quickly on the schedule, we're here tonight on November 6th. If approved, staff intends to do the final detailed design over the winter. We'll draft plans to determine the grading limits, the temporary construction easements, look at tree impacts, retaining walls, construction staging, and property-specific impacts, etc. After the new year, we would return to council to ask for a final plan approval, and then once we bid the project, we come back to council again for award of the project. Construction is anticipated then spring through fall of next year. So right before construction starts, we would have a 5th neighborhood meeting to talk through those construction impacts with the neighborhood. And then, like I said before, once construction is complete, either in late 24 or early 25, we would hold that city council final assessment hearing. So the layout is also in your packets. So what I have now is I have it broken down on 2 sheets. From top to bottom, it's from west to east. So on the top here, we have the city park with the 6-stall parking bay. The trail stays on the north. When you get to Fulham in the middle diagram, you have the 4-way stop at Fulham and the trail crossing to the south. It remains on the south. We have 2 additional parking bays. I missed the other parking bay. There's a parking bay kind of in the middle of the next one.
Yep.
Kind of across from St. Stephen's. We have a parking bay proposed west of Acorn and east of Acorn. And then as you come up to Cleveland, we widen out to the existing road width and add that little median you can see there in green. For recommended council actions, we asked for you to conduct a public hearing, receiving any public comments related to the proposed public improvements, and approve a resolution ordering the improvement and preparation of plans for the reconstruction of County B. What questions can I answer?
Great, thank you, Ms. Lowry. So first, we'll start with questions from the City Council for staff on the proposed project. Are there questions from the City Council this evening? If not, I can kick it off anyway. And this is just to clarify a couple of points. So first of all, on the amount of the project that's being assessed, talking about why isn't the project able to be 100% funded with, say, MSA funds, municipal state aid, or our own street fund? What is the gap that's left, and how come there's a gap, and sort of talk a little bit about that, if you can help folks understand that a little bit.
Why is it all MSA funds and also needs street funds, or also needs
No, why
benefit?
is there an assessment portion
Okay.
to it?
Okay.
As opposed to just being 100% MSA and street funds and these other sources?
Okay. All right. So that is applying our existing special benefit policy that calls for us to assess for these improvements. That there's different assessments if residents have requested an improvement than if a city is bringing a project forward. But there are benefits that would be seen to these individual properties, and the policy asks that those properties pay a portion of the project cost because they will see a benefit to their properties, for example, when they go to sell. Is that what you're asking?
So essentially, we don't build a street project, a reconstruction, without some form of assessment.
Correct.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't because some design element, say we were building a more sturdy road than our standard requires, and so it's above and beyond, so
Right.
we're assessing that additional amount, or, you know, do we always assess for the pathway portion but not the road, or those types of things? It doesn't sound like that's the case. Any reconstruction project would always have an assessed portion on the basis of that benefit to the adjacent properties.
Correct. It's just that we haven't done one for 7 years.
Right, no, and that's why I'm kind of going through
Yep.
some of those things, just for the benefit of perhaps new council members and old council members, as well as members of the public. Then, can you talk a little bit about why the pathway is on the north side and the western portion, and then moves to the south side as we go east? What sort of the reasoning behind that is?
So we have the new city park on the west end, which exists on the north side of the road. Then if you come down to Cleveland, there's another city park and trail on the south side of County B. So at some point, people will need to transition, depending on which direction they're going, to cross the street to get from north to south without having a trail or a pathway on both sides. So the conversation was either crossing it at Fulham or crossing it further west at St. Croix.
Right, and the existing path, or facility, if you will, is on the south side.
Exists on the south, yep. But it
And-
doesn't really extend as far west
As far
because that's new.
Right, and then
Development.
certainly in the area adjacent to Midland Hills Golf Course, that generally doesn't have people's private properties and driveways crossing it, and so theoretically, there's less impact to the local property owners being on the south side. Right, and then finally, this may be the toughest question of the ones I'm asking anyway. And that is, can you talk a little bit about sort of what the criteria were for deciding where to locate the parking bays? And you may feel free to do it bay by bay if you want to. I mean, it's fairly clear the one by the park is
Yeah.
to serve the park, but perhaps the other three, if you can talk a little bit about those choices and sort of what the thoughts were that went into them.
So I don't have all the historical versions loaded on here, but there was, they've generally gotten smaller and shorter than original proposals. There is, I mentioned a couple times, you cannot park on Eustis and you cannot park on Acorn. And it was also looking at the longer stretches where there are not side roads for people to park on. I should have had one, maybe I do have an aerial, but, so at the park, it's kind of obvious. There are the ones east and west of Acorn. So Acorn, you cannot park on. Some of the respondents of the survey requested parking around here. There's a lot of support for the one at 2111. The location of the one west of Acorn is debated and not loved or hated by everyone. And the one across from St. Stephen's that's kind of split between the top view and the bottom view here had some support by some residents, and right now extends past 2 driveways but could be shifted as well. So some of it was based on feedback from specific owners, but I would say it's who identified needs for parking, because I think that it'll be impactful when people realize that you cannot park there. And so since it's such a long-term decision, we want to have some flexibility there, even if it's only 9 parking spaces along the corridor to allow for parking to happen.
Right, and just on the farthest to the west, other than the park, the one sort of between Fulham and the road to the west.
Yep.
Is there the possibility that one could be on the north side and cross fewer driveways, or is there design issues with doing that, or?
We purposely had the trail on the opposite side of the parking
Okay.
so that we could, center the impacts a little bit more, but also avoid the parking happening right adjacent to the trail. So that does happen at the park for obvious reasons, because the parking and the trail are designed to go there, but they were intentionally kept on opposite sides.
Right. And the reason I ask about that is because I know that there are some locations in the city where we do have parking adjacent to trails.
Yep.
So it is possible, but
Yep.
but there definitely can be conflicts both with the pedestrians and cars and car doors, as well as just where do you put the snow if you've got a pathway and a street with parking that you're trying to clear the snow off of. So thank you for answering those questions. I appreciate that. All right, other council members, I think Councilmember Strawn, you had your hand.
Thank you. So I was wondering what limitations, if any, would be placed on the uses of the parking bays. I noted somebody mentioned they wanted to park a camper there. Is there any, that certainly quickly takes up 9 spaces by 1 or 2 people. So I'm wondering what kind of limitations there might be in that regard.
So our existing code doesn't have a whole lot of parking restrictions, so this wouldn't be proposed to have different restrictions than our citywide. So specific to RVs, we do have code that addresses that it can only be 4 days of duration and there's, if you're parking there for 2 hours, it counts as a day, and it can only be 4 days within a month. So there is existing code to address that. There's code to address trucks, and as far as cars, we don't have restrictions on durations of cars, but for when it snows, and we have the snow requirements.
I was wondering if there had been any consideration to adding one set of parking on the 2 streets that had restrictions.
They are, per our code calls for any road that's 24 to 26 feet wide to have no parking, and that's mostly to maintain minimum widths for fire truck and emergency vehicle clearances. So that's why those 2 have restricted parking, and similarly why this one would as well. But if you were 26 to 32 feet wide, that would allow for 1 parking. So essentially, without changing the code or without changing the width of those streets, we wouldn't allow parking on them.
Okay, and then the last question I had is wondering what accommodations or plans are made for signing the curb in front of the park for handicap access, so that would be provided and kind of assumed in that area, so.
And we haven't gotten to that with, we can work through that in detail design with parks and what their standard is and what their
I
expectation
just think it'd be
is.
important for the neighborhood to realize that that additional parking isn't just general access parking, but that would be specifically for handicapped utilization of the park space.
Well, and I think even just access of the park in general, because you won't be able to park on B or the next street to the west. You could only park on St. Croix or further up on Eustis. So as far as handicap or just going there with kids and lots of stuff kind of access, but yes.
Right. Thank you.
Right, other questions? Councilmember Short.
Yes, with the assessments, at what point in this project would that be billed to the individual people?
When is it levied?
Yes.
So after construction, like after final numbers are known, then we will verify that, because costs could go up or down, but we'll verify those numbers and again, check it against the special benefit. And then that's what the final assessment hearing has. It has those final numbers, and that's what comes before council. People have a chance to object or to ask for deferment, And then when council approves, then we send that to the county, and depending on when that gets filed with the county is when it'll either be levied in 2025 or likely 2026. And I think they'd see it on their 2026 taxes, and then they could have 10 years to pay that, is what our proposal would be. But that would also be set in the final assessment hearing.
And thank you for also elaborating on how much time they have. I was going to ask you to mention that so people understood how that worked as well, so thank you.
Right, other questions? Councilman Bratton?
Just want to talk through the traffic calming to help with the speeding. We have the narrower lanes. We've got kind of that median right at the entrance to this area. The slight swaying of the street, swaying's at the, not very technical thing. And then parking bays, theoretically, also if people are parked there, that tends to slow traffic, is that correct?
It'll make it feel tighter, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just making sure we're looking at this in multiple ways to help with that problem.
I think the tightness of the road itself will be the most impactful.
Yeah.
It'll be 21 feet of bituminous and then 2 feet on either side of concrete. So if you drive Eustis or Acorn out there, they are actually a foot wider, so it will feel tighter.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Graff?
Sort of along those same lines, I know when I was to the meetings, the recurring theme I heard was, how do we make sure it's a safe street? How do we slow down the traffic? And how do we stop the trucks that keep making mistakes and turning onto County Road B, thinking
Yep.
they can still get through to 280? So I assume that entrance with that median in it will help inform truck drivers that it'll make a tighter turn for them, and it'll be more difficult for them to make a mistake and come down there and
Yep.
have to turn around
Because
in our neighborhoods, because, as you know, that is my neighborhood. So those were the things I heard, and also how do we have utility vehicles parked, because there are utility lines along there. So how will they be managing to maintain or to work?
So, Mayor, council members, we do have, I anticipate that some of the parking bays will be utilized for that. On Josephine and Owasso, there's very similar conditions of a narrow road with parking bays, and that is typically how those are used. They park on them, the utility vehicles will park on them when they're close and convenient. We prefer they park on side streets, but they do need permits if they're going to be blocking traffic. So we don't have known issues of that functioning on West Owasso or Josephine, which is a similar condition. But the intention is that, like, short-term deliveries will still stop on the road as they probably do today. And utilities, if they need to be there for any longer duration, would need to obtain a permit from us. And if they are blocking traffic, we would require traffic control.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Strong?
I was curious to know about the tying of the west end of this path into what we've heard before was a path that went, continued to Eustis and headed north with the possibility of going along the wall and connecting to the circle at St. Croix. Do you know anything about, that's something that we've heard in the past. Do you know anything about that, or how this would be connected in, if at all, or what the future plan is on that?
You can see it in the top left of this picture. So there is a trail. I'm not sure. I would have to ask Jesse. Jesse probably knows from the top of his head.
He's going to tell us right now whether he knows.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. So there is a pathway, I don't remember which segment, but there is a segment on the pathway master plan that does connect the Eustis cul-de-sac to Fulham Street. But it is not currently planned as part of this project. We'd have to find funding. We haven't had a huge request for it, but with the pathway that was built with part of M Midland Legacy Estate 3rd Edition, there is the pathway basically does extend to the cul-de-sac, so there is that final connection that could be made, but that is not proposed as part of this project.
So this ends at where the Midland Legacy pathway begins?
Yeah, so our project connects to the Midland Legacy Estate pathway that was built. That pathway extends basically to the cul-de-sac of Eustis Street.
Thank you.
Other questions from council? If not, we'll go ahead and then proceed to public comment, and Ms. Lowry can take a breather. Just to reiterate the process for public comment, I did go through it a little bit earlier, but for folks who may not have been here, and just as a reminder, each speaker gets a 3-minute opportunity to speak, and we can cycle through speakers fairly quickly if we use both microphones and both chairs. So if somebody is sitting at one of the mics and speaking, somebody else who wants to be next can sit at the next one and wait their turn. And we can keep it moving that way. If people want to be the next person, they could even have a seat in one of the seats in the front row there behind the presentation table, just to be ready to take the next opportunity to speak. When you're finished with your remarks, if you can, I forgot. So going back, when you start your remarks, we would ask that you state your name and your address for the record. And then when you're done with your remarks, if your name is a name that we may not know how to spell, you can go ahead and write that on the clipboard off to the side while the next person starts to speak. That keeps things moving a little more efficiently, and then we make sure that we don't misspell your name in the official record of the meeting. Once again, address your comments or questions to the City Council, and we're not asking you to get into a conversation with the staff or with the council. We just want to hear what you have to say. If you have a question or a comment, then what we do is once all the comments and questions are completed, then we'll go back and attempt to answer any technical questions or process questions that we can. If it's a question about why are we doing this or whatever, that may be something that comes up or is addressed during the council's deliberation as we discuss what action we want to take. So we may not answer that directly right away as a result of the public comment. So that is kind of the guidelines. Once again, one bite at the apple per speaker. It's a 3-minute time limit, and I will try to be as gentle and generous as I can in enforcing it. But you can say a lot in 3 minutes. If you happen to have something written down and you're not able to finish it all in the time, you can give it to Mr. Trudgeon, and Mr. Trudgeon can make sure that all the council members get copies of it. I should note also for the record, we did receive one email today from Mr. Gravel on Fulham Street, who indicated he is not supportive of the 4-way stop at Fulham and does not believe that it enhances safety at that location. So I want to put that on the record, and certainly we got that was given to all council members and will be part of the public record as well. With that, then,
Mr. Mayor?
we do have, that's right, we have a script that we have to do for these hearings as well. So
And maybe as people are getting ready to speak, I can just state that.
well, and I'll do my part first, and we'll get to yours. I wanted to emphasize again, this is a hearing related to whether we construct this project. The decision before the council is whether to proceed with the project. A final decision will not be made at this time regarding assessment rates or how the costs will be allocated. That will be done at the assessment hearing, as was noted at the end of the project. I just wanted to note that again. Certainly it doesn't mean you can't talk about assessments or as part of your comments, but certainly we're not making any decisions about assessments or individual assessments at this particular meeting. With that, Mr. Trudgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Published and legal mail notices have been provided for this public hearing. Legal notices appeared in the city's legal newspaper, the Pioneer Press, on October 25th and November 1st, 2023. Mail notices were also sent on October 25th, 2023. Affidavits of publishing and mailing are available in the office of the city engineer.
Great, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. And with that, we will open up the public hearing and invite whoever's first to come up and kick off the proceedings. And once again, just start with your name and address for the record, and no need to adjust microphones. We'll take care of that through the sound engineer, so feel free to jump right into your remarks.
Hi, good evening. Darrell LeBaron, 2101 County Road B. First of all, I just want to thank all of you for your service and running a really good city. I love it here. I also want to thank these two over here for the meeting at Corpus Christi. I thought that was really well run, and I think the design is a good start, really, really good start. I'm so in favor of this, I just have to let you know. Living on that road since 1997, we used to see 18-wheelers going by, and they didn't stay at 35 or 40. So the bridge falling down was a tragedy in one sense, but it was really a benefit for this neighborhood. It just changed entirely, and it's good. But on the other side, I grew up in rural Minnesota, and there were a lot of county roads that were maintained a lot better than County Road B. So it's about time the city take ownership and get this done. As Engineer Jennifer knows, I did send her a note of support and appreciation for her. And, but I also called out the parking bay next to my mailbox. And I just want to say that that parking bay is a utility easement that serves that entire block. It's about 20 residential homes in there, give or take. But I've seen 1 or 2 trucks and vehicles at a time for Excel, not Excel, but Affinity. Just recently, a couple weeks ago, Century 21, emergency, printing all day Saturday. Had to bring coffee to the workmen, help them out. But tree trimmers and so on. So that one bay, I just wanted to, as you know, speak in favor of that bay that, as a former architect for 50 years, I'm hardwired about life safety. And I think to have those trucks have a pullover area and the maintenance for that is just essential. And wanted to speak to that. That's the only reason I'm here, is saying I may be a little different than anyone else in the neighborhood. Lots of good people there. And I just want to, again, thank them for what they've done. And I'm going to excuse myself because I've been deer hunting all weekend and I am bushed. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Hopefully that was more fun than this. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Gina Sapia, and I live at 2175 Acorn Road. On the map, it's 2151. My address was 2151 County Road B. It's now 2175, so so there's no confusion there. I am also in support of this project. I think they're doing a great job. But I don't support a parking bay being in front of my home, which is the proposed plan as of right now. My main concern is having strange cars parked in front of my house and also having neighbors use that space for supplemental parking. I essentially don't have a backyard. My house butts up to right up to the back of the property to the north and to the west. So my main yard is that front yard. And I'm just not comfortable having that be our active area as a family and for kids to play and then having strange cars parked there. It's not so much an issue if it's a neighbor that I know, but it just makes me nervous. So it's also my understanding that the parking bay will be 7 feet deep. Is that correct? Okay. So I know it won't actually go onto my property, but it's going to go closer into my property than many others on B. And snow removal, salt, sand, all of that's going to end up more into my yard. I'm already dealing with trying to deal with trees that are dying there, and I'm trying to do some landscaping. So I just really don't want to have a parking bay if it can be helped. I think that's really all I have to say.
All right.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
My name is John Tosod, spelled Tango Oscar Sierra Oscar. Live at 2170 Midland, View Court North. My concern is if the county has ceded this road to the city, do we still call it a county road? I think a lot of semis see that County Road B West, it must be a county road, and people drive it like a county road. So is it not time for us to change that? I mean, I know that means it's a lot of difference to people that have mailing addresses on that, but we really we really have to take it, I think, the bull by the horn and just say, call it what it is. It's no longer a county road. One other minor thing, at 2170, the county has very nicely given us a rain garden. I'm hoping, though, that the curb does not add water to that because we still get flooded. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your comments. Appreciate that. Other public comment on the proposed roadway?
Good evening. My name is Doug Heck. I live at 2321 County Road B. I have several concerns. First of all, earlier I heard that Jennifer, I believe, said that there is parking on both sides of County Road B, and that is not the case. There's only parking on one side of County Road B because the pathway runs the full length right now on the south side from Cleveland to almost to Eustis at any rate. So my concern is several-fold here. One being the intersection where it crosses County Road B to at Fulham. I know I heard earlier in the statement that that intersection in general is more dangerous because of the offsets in it and the oddities of the way it lines up. So it seems to me that crossing people there is an added risk. And also, making people that use that pathway all the way down to have to cross there instead of further down to the west is another added risk, just because of the reduction of cars and traffic volume. As you go further west, that volume drops off significantly from east to west. So from Fulham down to, say, St. Croix, that traffic drops maybe 20–25%. So just that number of volume of cars reduces the, or it actually enhances the number of dangerous crossing at Fulham versus further down, say, at St. Croix. There's a couple other ones here. The utility bays. I know someone commented on the utility trucks using utility bays to service things. Right there on the corner of my lot at 2321, there is several, there's electric trucks, there's Comcast trucks that are there 4, sometimes 5 times a month to service that now is going to have to park on that parkway to use their lift trucks to get to those utilities, to access that. There's no parking bay that they're going to be able to use to pull off there to service those things there at that corner. Not at the corner, but right at the corner of my driveway. So again, safety concern for the people that are walking there now are going to be forced to walk back out into the street because those trucks are going to block that pathway. There's no two ways about it. And the utilities run on that north side the whole length of County Road B. So that, it's not a problem down there by where the golf course is because there's no pathway on that side. But you bring it down here and all of a sudden now we cross it and we got to deal with that for the rest of the length down to the park. You don't have any of those issues on the south side of County Road B. That's where the pathway is now, and it's a clear shot down there. There's no utilities to be accessed or anything like that. And just the volume of cars at that corner is significantly more than it's going to be down at St. Croix if you cross down there. And even less if you went down, close to Eustis or right in front of the park and crossed right there would be the best spot of all. The less risky place of anywhere. So, I mean.
You're about 40 seconds over
Okay,
your time.
I've taken,
If you can wrap up.
in the consideration that the pathway could be on my side, and I'm all right with that. My concern is the safety for these people that are going to walk that pathway now, that are going to be forced to cross in anticipation of maybe somebody accessing the pathway from the north and getting on there, right? So you're moving people that are on the pathway for someone that might use it, might actually access it. So That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for the time.
Yep. All right. Additional public comment on the proposed roadway reconstruction? All right. One last call. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the proposed roadway reconstruction? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you, everyone, for your participation in the process throughout, including this evening, and sitting through our other business before we got to this point. We then have the request before us to approve the reconstruction project as outlined and order the project. I did want to see, just in terms of the public comment and any questions that come up. So just on the naming part of it, we did have a discussion at the City Council a couple meetings ago about putting in place a street naming policy and how that would look and how that would work. And so that's something I know has come up, and staff has brought it to our attention as part of this process. And so we'll certainly look at that. And we know that there are some parameters and restrictions that the county puts on us, even though it's not a county road anymore, as to how we can name streets. So we'll work through all that, and hopefully we'll have a process in place that we can use going forward, and if it works out, it can be used on this street as well. So that's something that's sort of in the works. I think staff will probably work to accommodate existing rain gardens and make sure that they can function and continue to function, maybe even function better as a result of this project. I think those were kind of the big things that I saw. Council, was there any other questions that came up that you wanted to make sure that we had staff answer? Councilman Bratton?
I would like Ms. Lowry to articulate, I know the original design had the crossing of the, from north to south at St. Croix. Can you talk about the reasons, again, to move it further east to Fulham, please?
So the idea is that residents coming from the north, theoretically going to the park, would only have one crossing instead of two. So moving it to the north sooner will capture more residents than exist on the south of the road. But I think the biggest improvement and reason for having it at Fulham is because if we're going to have a stop sign on this corridor, that is the most logical place to have it.
There's the four-way.
Is the four-way stop. So today it's a two-way stop, but County B continues through. Having a four-way stop will increase the stopping rates for people to cross there. So regardless of, at all the intersections, pedestrians have the right-of-way at the intersection, but yield rates are very low. If you have a stop sign, although not 100%, it is much higher a percentage. And so having that four-way intersection helps with that.
Thank you.
And just if I can follow up, certainly there was a notion that the traffic count farther to the west decreases, and that tends to make sense. There's less people living that far west and less need for access. But did we really notice that it's that significant that there's going to be potentially a safety benefit to still have the crossing farther west? Or is, I just don't remember that the traffic counts drop off that dramatically, or that they're even that high at Fulham to begin with, that it makes that much difference from an engineering perspective. But I don't want to overthink this here.
Yeah, it's less than, or roughly 1,000 cars in various locations on the corridor, and the actual counts aren't that realistic, given that it's still under construction and being developed at the west end.
Any other items that council wanted to make sure and follow up with staff on? All right, we've got the request. Oh, Councilor Strong.
I just wanted to know, it seems a little bit arbitrary where the parking bays were, and I'm sure there was a rhyme and a reason by how it went. Would there be any consideration to having parking across one whole side of the non-path side? Or does that eliminate the advantage of having the narrower lanes?
Like having it longer, like a full side of parking?
Yeah.
So part of this is that I've only been here since February, so a lot of that has,
Come on, Mr.
a lot of those iterations happened before. So I'll defer to Jesse on how we got to the parking bays versus parking on one side. Is that your question?
Yeah, so we did consider the full parking bays. We didn't get when we had the first public meeting, when we showed the layouts, we had very little support for parking the entire corridor. I think it was pretty obvious people didn't see a complete need, especially in front of the country club side. We only have homes on one end. Additionally, it would, from a staff perspective, it'd be a lot more cost to add that. So our cost estimate and assessments would go up. You drive the corridor, there's not a lot of, any time of day, there's not a lot of on-street parking. It's random, it's hit and miss, it's utility vehicles, stuff like that. But traffic calming, you put that on there, you're gonna lose all the benefit of a narrower road. So the parking bay is similar to Josephine and West Owasso. It does help make the road feel narrower compared to a traditional 32-foot wide street, because this is 0.8 of a mile. It has been a county road. It looks like a county road, so we're trying to make it not feel that way.
Okay. And I'd just like to add, I know it's frustrating for folks who have that by their house and say, well, you don't know who parks there, but for most of the people in the city, it's open parking in front of my house, and of course, I go to the window every time to see who's out there. But, they can park there. I don't get to decide. You get the mean, nasty note from the neighbors once in a while if you park in front of their house, but you don't own that space. So I know it can be frustrating, but it's not necessarily an implied right that you have that space in front of your house to yourself, so.
Great. I actually do want to follow up on that. One point is that I imagine that the notion of sort of a small yard with not a lot of side or rear yard was probably not a criteria that was taken into account in the selection of the bay locations. And it might be something to think about. I'm trying to think of how many homes even along that corridor have sort of the same issue. I know, I believe when that particular lot was developed, it was, I believe, a subdivision of a larger lot. And so it's kind of meeting the minimum setbacks that were there at the time, which does provide for less sort of space in the yard for that. So I do understand the concern there, and it may make sense to think about if that is looked at as a criterion, if there are some ways to potentially shift at least that bay in that regard. But at the same time, if it turns out that factor, even if we look at that, doesn't necessarily weigh that strongly because of maybe there's something there's something about it that I'm not thinking of right now that means it doesn't make sense to make that change. That would be the only thing, but I would only make that as a suggestion to consider during the detailed planning process. I don't know that would be something that I would hold up approval on the basis of, certainly. And in that regard, we do have the requested action this evening is to adopt the resolution, which is the attachment in the packet, attachment 1, to order the project and approve the plans as presented, essentially.
Mayor, so moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Bratton, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder, to adopt that resolution and approve and order the project as outlined. And if I've put too many words in there, it's what the resolution says. With that, we've got the motion, maker of the motion, Councilmember Bratton, first to discuss.
Sure, I'd like to say thank you to all the residents who are here but have participated in all the meetings. The sheer number of human beings who participate in the meetings is really impressive and great. So thank you for all that participation. I appreciate staff who've heard a lot of concerns and responded to so many of them, making a lot of improvements for this road. And it may not be perfect, but it's a whole lot better than it is right now. So I appreciate all of the adjustments and changes and nuance and looking for ways to make this a lot better for residents.
Right, Councilmember Schroeder is the seconder of the motion.
I would echo that. I'm really impressed with how many people got involved in this. And the one thing why I second this is I did not hear anyone say, no, don't do this project. So it seems like people want the project. It's just some of the details that were being debated. So I feel good that people do want this project to go ahead, however it ends up looking. I know there'll be some tweaking as we go, but I do support going ahead with it.
Additional discussion on the motion, Councilmember Groff.
Yeah, obviously, thank you to the staff and also to the neighbors who participated in this, because this only works if we hear from everybody, and we don't always hear on projects from people, so we can't make the changes after it happens. So this is really important that you have input at this stage of the game. The main things, like I said before, and I'm just going to reiterate it, is safety and to reduce the truck traffic coming down there. And I think those are the things that have been addressed in here. There may be some tweaks to this that'll come along the way, but I feel really good about what's happened with the project so far, so I will support it.
Additional discussion on the motion? And I'll echo everything else that's been said. I did want to just note something I had thought of during the testimony, and I just remembered it again now. A suggestion to, this may help with trucks turning on to B, or whatever we ultimately call it, coming especially southbound on Cleveland off of 36 and 35W, is if there's a way to square up that corner a little more and make it a much more difficult turn for trucks. Now, granted, if somebody's going to be moving in and they have a moving van coming in, that may be introduce a new challenge, but maybe those types of sort of shorter-term negative impacts for residents may be outweighed by, the longer-term elimination or reduction of some of that turning motion by trucks, thinking that that's a connection that they can use. So I've just put it out there once again as a suggestion, not going to change necessarily how I vote on things, but I did want to get that recorded somehow before I forget it again. With that, we've got the motion before us to adopt the resolution and approve the project as outlined and go into the next steps. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that resolution is approved. And again, thank you to everyone who's participated. And folks may want to stick around for the next item, perhaps. This is an update we'll be getting from our police department on the community action team, so keep that in mind. But I understand if you've got places to be and things to do.
Take a short break.
Do you want to take a break?
I do.
Okay, well, let's take about a 5-minute break
Get them
then.
set up
All right,
anyway.
thanks. to adjust the full location.
As they speak, maybe they'll move the
Face
microphone.
hair.
They're authorized by state law to move
To have
microphones.
face hair.
All right, well, now that we're back on, I should probably call us back to order here and return to the council meeting agenda. We have with us this evening representatives of our community action team who are going to talk about the work they've been doing and highlight their activities. And with that, I think I turn it over to Deputy Chief Adams first to kick it off and take it from there.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the council, I'm excited to be before you today to talk about some of the progress we've made with our community action team. As you all know, this team was developed in 2021 over a lot of hard work between you all on the council, our community, our multicultural advisory committee. This was really something that we wanted to put together to get to the root cause of a lot of the issues that we were seeing as a police department, and maybe a lot of things that weren't necessarily police related. We realized we didn't necessarily have the right tool to be responding to a lot of the different calls for service that we had been doing for years and years. And continually doing the same thing obviously was not providing the results that we truly wanted. So very fortunate to work with you all to get some grant funding to build this team from the ground up. And I'm sure a lot of you know, but every single person at this table was selected by staff, but also with input from the community, from our multicultural advisory committee, because we knew we needed the right people literally at the table to make this work. So I'm happy and proud to report that this investment that you all made is paying off. It's paying off huge. And today you're going to hear directly from the team as they discuss their experiences and connections made. And, you know, I don't get a chance to thank these folks very much publicly, so I'm going to do that now. You know, we all know that without the people, the right people, a program's not going to be effective. And these are absolutely the right people. They're doing some amazing work with the community action team. Just real quick, just as a recap before I pass it off, the team concentrates primarily on 5 different areas, as you see on the screen today. Homeless outreach with Carrie, who's not here today. Human trafficking, which we've done a lot of work statewide and locally here with a lot of partnerships. Our problem properties, auto thefts, which has been huge throughout the entire metro to include catalytic converters. And the folks that will be speaking with you today are embedded social workers with the behavioral health unit. With that, John, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief, and City Council, thank you. A couple of quick things I want to
You
mention.
can introduce yourself.
I'm sorry. Sergeant Sean Johnson of the Roseville Community Action Team. So I wanted to give a little historical context as I introduce the team, where we were and where we are now. Initially, when we formed CAT, we started these partnerships with both People Inc., Ramsey County Crisis, and we joined the East Metro Crisis Alliance. And at that time, we started mostly as a referral-based team. And then we were able to bring on board and enhance our partnership with People Inc., Ramsey County Crisis, to now have embedded mental health professionals with us and here today. And the differences we're seeing in this short period since 2021 is when we were referral-based, it was more of a send it outward, and then we had less case involvement. And now today, we're able to directly connect with our clients and provide that low barrier approach to get them the resources and case management that they so need. The members of this team are comprised of Ramsey County being Dunia Ahmed and Sally Vanderstrom, and then People Inc., Molly Slade. And then with us today is Officer Brian Anderson, and not with us is Officer Phil Tanis. How the behavioral health team works is the main types of referrals that we get is going to be co-response to in-progress crisis-related calls. Most of the co-response and in-progress crisis-related calls comes from the 911 calls that happen through dispatch and go out to squads. At that time, we either hear the calls or the squads have the ability to contact us and have our team respond out to assist them, sometimes together and sometimes with us following up independently. We also do follow-up casework assignments to all the cases that come in that are behavioral health related. To date, we have about 1,100 plus cases, which is about 100 cases a month, and we've identified 200 plus unique clients that are in the city that these mental health professionals are following up with on a daily and weekly basis. Also, we've really tried to step up our game with the proactive outreach. You'll see us more at community outreach events, the public events, getting our name, trying to get awareness out there, whether it's at the Ramsey County Library, trying to do public awareness through social media, also through pamphlets. We have door knockers for our officers to use, or for community members to hang, for people to learn and contact us. And we also participate in the family night out to try to get out to those individual block parties so that they can meet this team and meet them at that low barrier approach before someone's in crisis. And with that, I'll introduce you to Officer Brian Anderson, who's to speak a little bit about what it means to him to go out on these calls.
Yeah, Mayor and council members, thanks so much for having our team here today. I've been around since the creation of kind of the co-response unit, and by far it's something that I've never experienced in law enforcement before. This is a big swing, big change, and I'm happy to be proud of it, or be part of it. Working with a lot of the co-response calls, I'm able to go out immediately with any of our social workers here and get the help to those individuals that are needing it and seeking that extra, whether it's attention or help or whatever it needs to be addressed. But the clients that we go and see, having the social workers here with us to be able to get connected with the community resources, the hospitals, whatever those resources are that are out there, they can do that immediately and have that done. And in my years of working in law enforcement, this is the first time that I've actually seen it happen. And now, instead of not necessarily bringing somebody directly to the hospital, we can get them stabilized within their own home sometimes. So. I think.
Hi.
Sorry. Next. I'll pass it on. Yeah.
Dress
Molly.
rehearsal. So, good evening. I'm going to read because I get nervous. What? Oh, my name is Molly Slade. I'm a resident of Roseville, and I'm going to just dive into my little spiel. I'm a clinical social worker with more than 20 years experience. I have lived with my family in Roseville for 13 years. I was on the Human Rights Commission from 2012 to 2015. I participated in the Imagine Roseville sessions and witnessed firsthand then Chief Mathwig's sincere commitment to listening to the citizens and thoughtfully addressing how to best approach public safety for all. Back then, we discussed what it could look like to embed a social worker in the department. When this position was created through a collaboration with People Incorporated, I could not apply quick enough. I was so excited. In the past 6 months, I have developed a collaboration with community members to discuss ways to support and assist families struggling with loved ones' mental health symptoms, and to hopefully avoid that crisis call or a potential negative outcome. I'm grateful to these residents who have entrusted us with their stories and their hopes for change in this process. I've also been able to document the vulnerable adult reports we receive from the Minnesota Department of Health. After our detectives have cleared the reports of any charges, I track the data and multiple reports from our and have documented the multiple reports from our skilled nursing facility, congregate living, and individual citizens. I'm able to commit the time to follow up with both the victims and the reporters. We have already identified cases of financial abuse at one facility that has resulted in potential charges against the perpetrator. I'm so grateful to be a part of this innovative approach. I believe we're on the cutting edge of the future of public safety for all. So thank you, Mayor and council members, for your, as a resident and an employee, for your very visible commitment to making Roseville a safe place for everyone. So thanks.
Let's move that microphone.
So, Mayor?
Yeah,
Just rotate a little bit. There you go. Perfect.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Dunya Ahmed. I'm one of the embedded social worker with Ramsey County, and mainly before I joined this team 6 months ago, I used to work. I always have interest in to work with justice. So I used to work as forensic mental health case workers for over 6 years, and I work with mental illness and dangerous populations. But lately, I just decided to switch my role. This is why I joined the team of the embedded social work. And one of the area I'm interested in, not just working with adults, also interested to work with juveniles. And one of my part I'm doing right now with the Roseville PD. I connect with the schools in Roseville, school districts, where I work closely with the social worker. I meet with them in their monthly meetings, and I have a connection, and I start getting clients from the schools. So for example, if the schools, since I work longer hours and I work full-time, so if there is any like follow-ups, any connection with the families, I will do above that. And also I have interest in to work specifically with group homes. And I find out like there is a lot of calls from group homes, even so they have a whole team. They working with them, but we have a lot of calls from group homes and specifically specific home groups home in an area. And I have example, I have client B, she lives in a group homes where she's supposed to have a whole team, but we just find out this house, we've been having a lot of calls. For example, since end of last year until this year, we have more than 79 calls just from this house.
Wow.
We can say 35 calls just from a specific client B. And just in a month of June or July, we got more than 23 calls. And most of the calls, she will just need seeking attention. She said the staff, they do not respond to her needs, or she just want to go to the hospital because she likes the snack over there. So I decided to host a team meeting with the whole team. So in August 9th, I hosted a meeting with the whole team, with her whole team, which included the director of the group homes, the house manager, the supervisor of her day program, and their supervisor, and also included her guardians, and her caseworker and the supervisors. And we have a meeting for over 2 hours. And the outcomes that came out of the meetings that we was able to discuss, like she need to do a reevaluation of the medication because the PRN she's taking is not kicking right away. So that means there is areas there here they have to talk about it with the psychiatrists. We was able to refer her to an adult rehabilitation mental health worker where she will meet with her twice a week, sit down, helping her with her daily living skills. We was able to refer her to a therapist to see in person once a week. And also I requested if there is any possibility, if we can just keep her busy because she need to be busy. So instead of going to one day, to a day program, we increase it to twice a week. And I just feel like this is something that can be done by them, but they didn't take initiative of that. And also I request, there was concern from me that she does not have an appropriate client, staff that who are trained to work with her. So we was able to request from her caseworker to have one-to-one worker just work with her in a certain time of the day there where she get like increase her symptoms. And thanks God, since we had that meeting, 2 weeks after the call started to drop, like we just within the 2 weeks after the meeting, we only have 3 calls. And was in August. In September, I only get 2 calls, no call to dispatcher, no calls to other crisis, just to me saying, I miss you. And 1 call in October, and that's it. So we feel like we did a good job in this area. And also, as I mentioned earlier, like connecting with the school, where I start getting a lot of calls from the school, and with the fact that the resources officer are no longer there, which I feel like it's needed. So we play in a role to connect with them as well. Yeah. And I'm turning the microphone to Sally.
Hello, thanks for having us. My name is Sally Vannerstrom. I am a licensed social worker. I've worked with the police since May. Junie and I both started around the same time. And I've worked since 1991 in the field of mental health, working with serious and persistent mental illness. And so I respond to the calls that come in from someone who's maybe experiencing psychosis or mania or frequently that comes with drug use. And so I respond by either going off with Officer Brian or Phil and meet with them at that time, or I will follow up with the call that comes in after that to see if I can help them get connected with any kind of services. See what they need, if there's something else that can be done to help them move away from calling the police. I think that's about it.
Nice. Do you want to describe some of these graphs that were on here?
Oh, yes, okay, so those are mine.
Sorry.
Forgot about that. So this is,
I apologize.
It's a challenge.
so
You
the
gotta-
first
You didn't
individual.
describe them fast enough.
Missed your window.
So the first one that's going to be coming up is individual who struggles with mental health symptoms resulting in difficulty with isolation and feeling secure.
This one.
After moving into her own apartment earlier this year, she called 911 multiple times to assist with thoughts to end her life and struggled with the need to utilize the hospital for safety. She was eventually able to agree to move back into the group home that she had been in before that. And so this place has a lot more services for her. It's reduced the isolation that she was experiencing. She does still call the police, but it's been a lot less. And she's called and said that she's missed me, and so we'll, hopefully, she really misses the officers. She likes them a lot. So I tried to convince them to go back. The second one, this is a male who struggles with both chemical dependency and really untreated mental health symptoms. So he really had difficulty recognizing the need for help, and he would then use and struggle a lot with suicidal ideation. He would see things in the yard and so would call the police for that. The system failed him in so many ways, and so we were able to meet with him and try to build, just meet with him, just to see him and start talking, and he agreed to call for chemical dependency treatment and actually got into treatment and is now living in a sober home and is completing treatment and is really doing amazing. So that was like a huge success. Lovely man. And, it's just to be able to get in there and be with people and help them through this, this is not their fault. No one's born wanting to have either mental health illness or chemical dependency, right? No one wants that, but then you have it, and what do you do? So I really appreciate the opportunity to get in there and try to help people.
I'll just finish by saying I believe that the appropriate response or alternative response, as it's called, is the future of public safety. And everybody at this table, I think, let me rewind, when a lot of our officers, pretty much every single one interviews, the question like, why do you want to be a police officer? Why do you want to work in public safety? It's like, I want to help people. And this is, for me, at least in my almost 20 years here, is one of the first times where I really feel like we're helping people. We're getting to the bottom of a lot of the causes. And I honestly believe that this is the future of public safety, and we're so fortunate to work in a city that's investing in it. And I do believe it was already said, we're at the cutting edge of this. I don't think there's a team as large and dynamic as ours in the metro area, and we're showing results. So thank you to you all, and with that, I'll open up for any questions or comments from the council.
Questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Groff? Just go.
Mostly comments, of course. I am more than pleased with all the work you're doing. This is just a dream come true. And I hear it from the community. I spoke with Mindy Greiling a couple weeks ago, and she was just giving you guys rave reviews. She's going like, this has been what she's worked with mental illness issues her whole life, and she said she's so proud of Roseville. So we all are. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Schroeder?
Yes, thank you all for your work, and I'll have to say, if I'm talking to other city, elected people from other cities, or I'm talking to a lot of residents, you guys are like one of the first things out of my mouth that I talk about, because, I am so proud that our city does this. I mean, this is awesome, and it's when I talk to other city officials, they're like, what? And they're just like blown away about the whole thing. And so I think it's not only are we doing a good job here, but we can be a beacon and an example for other cities to see how this can be done. And so I think it's important for you guys to toot your horn or to get out there and tell, let people know, because this is a secret we do not want to keep. We want everybody to know about this, because it's awesome. So thank you so much.
Councilman Ratton.
I would echo all of these positives. Thanks for your work. I would note that this group really was started when the police department asked for extra money in 2020. It was a tough time. And we said, how are you going to do it differently? And you guys have fleshed out that. And so thank you for all that work.
Councilmember Strawn.
Well, I want to thank you. I had the opportunity to do a ride-along a little over a year ago, so the team has grown substantially since then, but those few hours were super impactful, and maybe have a different view of some of the just places that I drive by every day. So I think that just is really impactful and adds that extra level of understanding. There was a little bit of miscommunication in the community that somehow tonight we were going to pull your funding, and that your funding was in danger. And
we heard about it.
And we heard about it. And I had to reach out to the person who was kind of starting that and say, hey, that's not true. But I think the overwhelming response we got, and not just the ones that we got, but the many that, and Wayne and I got as well, people realize the value, and if they know you're here, they know how important you are to what we do, and it is the shining star of something that can be really good. I worked in a group home, and we had an opportunity to have a similar team come, and they could not believe the difference between calling the police and the crisis that created in the whole environment, and then calling a mental health team, and how there was no screaming, there was no, everyone was calm, and people left in a healed space much better. And so I know firsthand that it can be really beneficial, and I just thank you for bringing that to our city, because I feel really honored to be sitting here and being able to take a little bit of ownership for your presence. It's wonderful. Thank you.
And I get to echo all of that. And I think that it was exactly right what Councilmember Ratton described is, we wanted to see how we could do things differently. We wanted to provide resources, but I think we wanted to see what those resources could really do, and how can we attack the problems in a different way. And I think, like has been said, it's just been tremendous. I think the two questions that come to my mind are probably we're not providing enough resources in this area, even for the city of Roseville, even with everything we're doing. I would probably get agreement from you on that if we could do more, we'd have even more impact, and that the need is there. And the other piece of it is, I think that we really should and could be advocates for more funding, more support for this type of work throughout Minnesota and throughout the country, really. And that anything we can do to get this on the radar of legislators and decision makers and policymakers at higher levels than us, because we are very much dependent on funding other than the taxpayers of Roseville for this program. And we're happy to do it, and I think I think given some of the response we're getting, we can probably ask for more from the taxpayers of Roseville, maybe. We'll see about that. But I think, it just says that it works, and that there's value, and I think we need to show that and use our example to try to advocate for more and better for everyone, because having been on the board of NYFS and seen the challenges in the mental health industry from that side of things, and just knowing how it's hard enough in our country to adequately deal with healthcare issues. Mental health is health. And it is always sort of the redheaded stepchild of the health world, the crazy uncle that you lock in the bed, whatever analogy you want to use. It just does not get, no, that's probably not the analogy I want to use. Sorry about that.
What you were doing.
But the point being is that we need to show what works, and we need to make sure that resources get where they need to be, because we can't do it all ourselves. We can barely do all the good that we're doing in Roseville isn't all the good we can or should be doing and are able to do unless there's a lot of support across the whole spectrum. And so I think we need to, not only be that beacon, be that shining example, but make sure we're out there, telling everyone about it and talking to the important people that we need to be talking to.
Yes.
And so I think, and I don't want to make your life more difficult. We'll try to help you out with that a little bit too. But they may not ask me to be the speaker in any of these things. But Councilmember Graham.
Just wanted to add in, those graphs really were important, and the examples are very important when you bring those to us, because hopefully some of the residents are watching too. This is what they need to know, because those concrete examples are what people remember, and that's what they want. They want to know their tax dollars are being spent well, and that we're making a good effort with our policing. And also, thank you for collecting the data, Molly. I think that's really great to have that record ongoing, so that as we go further, we can use that information to perhaps ask for other funds from other sources. So.
And the other piece I didn't mention, because I got stuck in my analogies, was that one of the arguments also is that it allows the non-CAT team part of the police department, which still exists and is very important, to focus on what they do best. Because I think we all acknowledge that police officers aren't the best social workers. They're not intended to be social workers. You can do a lot of good things, but it's not sort of part of the system for doing public safety. And so the average police officer, besides the CAT team folks, once again, just isn't equipped, to handle those situations as well. And so that's what
they don't have the beards.
Leads good, very well.
Question.
But once again, I think that was the other part of the objective. And so I think the more we understand about that aspect of how we're able to do our jobs as a complete department better, and the rest of the department, because of the focus of the CAT team, I think that's part of the story we need to be telling as well. Because I think that is something that we're seeing. We've heard a little bit recently about issues with shoplifting at some of our retail and things like that. And we have people that can do those investigations and can track down those suspects and do those types of things. But a lot of their time has in the past been spent responding to all these numerous calls that really it's not the appropriate response, and it's not the best use of that time and resource that we have in our community. So I wanted to make sure that was part of the message as well. So thank you again. Anything else from council or from members of the team? To kind of, we've ended on a pretty high note here, so maybe we better just quit while we're ahead. But anything else?
No. Good. Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thanks for being here this evening.
Yeah.
I think
Great work. Well done.
It's important that we have these updates, and
Yes.
it's the same thing when we had the members of the MAC here, and we're able to hear about their work as well. So I think we just need to keep that going and keep the word out there in the public. Councilor Armstrong.
Might I add or request, if you have more cards that we can, it seems like I need to share mine as often as quickly as I get them. I'd love if you have any today, even to leave them for us, it'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
And I'm campaigning for more beards, so.
You're part of the beard block.
We lost one of the beards just recently.
On that note,
Thank you.
thank you again for being here.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Clapping from the audience.
The shadow need to stop slapping.
And now we move from one exciting and wonderful topic and uplifting to another, our utility rates. Tough segue.
It's maybe not as exciting as the last presentation.
Not quite, but no, we do have as one of our items here this evening to take a look at our initial look at our proposed 2024 utility rates. With us this evening, we have our Finance Director, Michelle Petrick, who will give us the introduction to this and stand for questions, I imagine. Ms. Petrick.
So as you may recall, we hired Ellers to assist us with conducting a utility rate study in 2020 of our water and stormwater funds. In '22, we had an update of that utility rate study done, for those two funds, and we included the sanitary sewer fund as well. We are in the second year of implementing the increases that were recommended in that utility rate study. In the water fund, the main driver of our need for increased rates is a 9.5% increase from St. Paul Regional Water. St. Paul Regional Water does a 5-year rate study, and their rate study called for a 9.5% increase in '23 and '24, an 8% increase in '25, and then a 5% increase in '26 and '27. We were able to play with different rates, trying to keep our increases as low as possible. And our utility rate study recommended an 8% increase in the rates for the water fund for '23 to '28 to cover the fixed and variable costs, our debt service costs, and replenishment of fund reserves. And our fixed and variable costs do include capital outlay plans, public works in an effort to minimize or meet the increased rates. They reprioritized some projects. So in '23, '24, and '25, we had moderated our projects and realigned them into later years so that the reserves can be rebuilt in the water fund. In the storm drainage fund, Public Works had done an intensive analysis of the capital storm drainage system, the infrastructure, and they identified a significant increase in capital outlay needs in the range of $2.5 to $3 million. They have moderated those projects to allow for reserves to be built, while the rate study calls for a 33% increase in '23 and '24, which sounds like a huge dollar amount. That actually resulted in $5 per quarter in '23 and $6.64 per quarter in 2024. And our rates are still in the mid-range for our comparable cities. The sanitary sewer fund is holding steady with a 2% increase. The main cost driver in our sanitary sewer fund is our charge to the Metropolitan Council Environmental Services to treat the sewer. And those increases, when we put the plan together, we had estimated an increase of 3% per year, which seemed reasonable. However, what we are finding is that in dry years, Roseville actually sees their costs increase as a percentage, and it's a ratio based on the whole member cities. In wet years, we do see a reduction. Cities that have high inflow and infiltration problems see higher increases in those wet years. But on an average, 3% cost increase from MCES is what we've seen historically. The recycling fund is not under the Ellers utility study. This is based on a contract, and as you recall, we switched carriers in '22. Our current contract goes through 2025, and when we started with the new carrier, the council made the decision that we were going to start building in a small factor for building reserves to purchase the carts, because when we bid the contract For 22 to 25, we only got one bidder. And it was felt that if the city purchased the carts, that the next time we go out for bid, we will solicit more responses from other vendors who do recycling. So with the proposed increases for a residential, single-family home with an average water consumption of 12,000 gallons and an average sewer consumption of 11,000 gallons, we are estimating that the total increase for all the utility rates would be an increase of $15.25 per quarter, or $5.08 per month, or $61 per year. That's how it breaks out. So with that, we are looking for council input, questions, and thoughts with regard to the utility rates. We will be bringing the final rates to the December 4th council meeting for adoption. And with that, if you have any questions.
And is it possible to put that table that's on, that summarizes the rate changes for the average payer up for folks to see at home? We can get it zoomed and focused appropriately.
Oh, how do we zoom?
It's about there. I can do that if you have any questions.
Sure. There we go. Yeah. Let the city manager take that role. And are there questions from the council? Councilmember Schroeder.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Just to clarify, under the base fee, is that where the capital is? When we're, you have usage fee and the base fee. Is the base fee is where we charge for the capital?
Capital is in both.
Is in both.
Is in both.
So my question is on the sanitary sewer. I went back to the spreadsheets that we looked at a while back. I'm sure everybody remembers that
For the
exciting
CIP.
time. Yep, the CIP. And back then, the capital fund for the sewer, number 600, showed that there was a lot of money in that account, more than we needed. And so my question is, do we really need to do the increase on this? And part of the reason I'm asking is, with the property taxes going up the way they are, I think if we can sharpen our pencil and delay some of our increases in the utility would be helpful for our residents. So I guess I know some of it is for, down the road, but it seems like this particular fund is one of the healthiest ones we have. And so if any of them where we could cut and maybe not have an increase would be here.
In the sanitary sewer fund, we actually did cut public works requests for capital outlay. And that was done because we do need to build reserves. And yes, over the course of 20 years, it looks like that fund will have significant reserves. The one thing that our current CIP does not factor in, but the utility rate study factored in, was inflationary costs. So when we examine where we've been historically, what we've been budgeting, what we've been spending, yes, over the course of the 20 years, it does look significant. The other thing to keep in mind is the water fund does not look that good and has not hit its minimum reserves. So it has to borrow money at year end from the sewer fund because on our financial report, we cannot record a deficit cash balance. And the water fund has had a deficit cash balance since before I started with the city.
So how much are we borrowing from the sewer fund typically?
When I started, it was over $2 million. We're down to $350,000 at the end of '23.
And does the water fund pay that back?
It does on the very next day. It's a book entry for reporting purposes because Gap County does not allow us to report a deficit cash balance. So it's an entry that's made on December 31st that's reversed on January 1st.
So, but again, it's still, I mean, and you mentioned that it looked good over 20 years, and actually looking at this chart, it looks good starting in 2023, actually, in 2024. So it looks like we have plenty of money in this capital account. Again, and we don't have to decide it tonight. I guess what I would just suggest is we take a harder look at some of this to make sure that it's absolutely necessary for this year to do this, because I am concerned about everything going up for the residents, and we have a lot of people on fixed income, and so if the property taxes are going up and now all the utility funds or fees are going up, I'm concerned that if we, can save our residents a little pain, at least for a year or two, I think that would be, nice to be able to do. So it's just a suggestion.
Mr. Trudgeon.
I was just going to comment, thank you for that. Always we want to have suggestions and look at what's the best way to approach it. And certainly we can make some adjustments now and understand we do keep coming back every year and it might look different every year as we go forward. That fund is in much better shape. And so, the water fund is something that we really have to focus on. And so we could probably have a little bit more freedom with the sanitary sewer fund. But question for Michelle, I just want to make sure I understand that fund balance also includes funds for operational needs as well. So it's not all capital, it's also to pay Met Council and to pay for our personnel costs. We recover that in rates, so that's what you try, so it's kind of in and out, but, so it's more than just capital, but.
And that still looks healthy, too.
Yeah. And so, but as you move forward in time, as you indicated, you certainly see this really big balance. We have to figure out that's some offset with inflation of the cost on that, but that's too hard to do it 20 years out. So, so something to keep in mind. So we'll continue to look at that and see what we could do to make the minimal impact of any future rate increases that may need to be done, which is hard to say at this point. And I think in some of my communications I mentioned we are looking to have another update of this utility study here in '24, just to kind of keep going back to make sure the assumptions are right. And if we can lower the expected rate increases, we're all for it. If we really want to look at that pretty closely. So we'll continue to do that, but thank you for bringing that up.
Great. Other questions from the council? Right, and thank you for putting the chart up for folks at home to see. I think that just, it helps, a presentation without any visuals. It just, sometimes it's hard to track the numbers if you're not writing them down, so appreciate that. And once again, we're not taking action on this evening. This will be something that the council will act on in conjunction with the budget, the tax levy, and ultimately the fee schedule as well at our December 4th meeting after our hearing on November 27th. So if folks wish to speak to the utility rate proposals, the 27th is your target date to do that, or email or call council members. Thank you again. Appreciate the information, the presentation, and thanks to staff for adding the additional background information. I think that also helps with the transparency for the public to understand sort of that we're in the midst of a multi-year implementation of the study that we did and how we got to where we're at. So that is appreciated. Thank you. All right, that brings us then to another financial item this evening, which is to take a look at proposed changes to the city's fee schedule for 2024. And I believe Mr. Trudgeon has this one. Mr. Trudgeon.
Yes, just real briefly, as you mentioned, this is the first look at the fee schedule for 2024. This will be coming back on December 4th. And there's probably two documents to really look at. Attachment 1 shows kind of the summary of the changes that were made and gives some explanation of why they were made. So mostly in community development and then in public works. And then on that second attachment 2, is a proposed fee schedule, and what's highlighted in yellow is the new fee. There are changes in fees. In some cases they're brand new, but oftentimes they're just adjustments for inflationary costs. So beyond that, I don't have any particular presentation, but we do have staff here if you have any particular questions about the fees on there, and hopefully that attachment 1 provides some background on why those fees were changed. But I would say overall, beyond just the normal incremental increases, there's really nothing majorly different from what we've done before.
right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Any questions from council members on the proposed fee schedule for 2024? Councilmember Bratton.
I would like just to appreciate the detail staff spends on this. Certainly, there are some fees that are going up, but there are several fees that are going down or disappearing. And I appreciate that we are taking the time to be thoughtful about what our actual costs are and reflecting that in this.
Thank you.
Right, other questions or comments from council members?
I would just agree with that, and good to keep up to state statute. I know noticed there were some changes that keeping us in compliance with that.
And I did note that there is that we added the tower lease agreement for wireless towers to the fee schedule as opposed to sort of individually negotiating. And I think that provides some benefit in terms of consistency, in terms of not spending a lot of time through negotiating processes, and some other benefits to the community. So that's good to see too. All right, and once again, this is an item that we'll take up at the beginning of December with all of our other financial decisions for 2024. And I would note, it doesn't appear that we have anybody from the public to comment on it. That's why I haven't called for public comment, in case folks are wondering at home. But once again, folks can certainly follow up with council members or staff if they have questions. And we look forward to hearing from folks on the 27th. The next item on our agenda then is to take a look once again at our meeting schedule, this time for the council. We did the EDA during the EDA discussion. I should also note, I appreciate staff being here to answer any questions that we might have had on the fee schedule. I heard that they were directed to do that, so I appreciate that. Mr. Trudgeon, the 2024 meeting schedule proposal.
Yeah, so I just pulled it up on the screen here, and it's in your packet as well. So what we try to do is follow kind of the normal schedule we've been doing the last few years as far as the pace of meetings or the rhythm of the meetings that we have here. And I think it was noted earlier, typically in March, that EDA meeting would have been on the March 11th date, but due to scheduling, that's going to be on the 4th. But everything else kind of stays in alignment with what we have done before. Certainly, these dates can change. I know there's always schedule conflicts with all of us and to make every single meeting, but this is where we ended up. So from my perspective, this is a starting point. So certainly if there needs to be changes, we can certainly look at them moving forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there thoughts or questions from council members? We're being asked to approve this evening, correct? Unless, obviously, there's...
Yeah, we can bring it back if you need to have additional discussion, though, of course.
Council questions, comments? Councilmember Schroeder.
Yeah, I know of 2 dates that I will not be at, so I know, I mean, that's just how it works, but one of them was the commission interviews. I cannot do those, so I just wanted to make sure we have enough people that can be here for that February date to do that.
And certainly, obviously, we do need to have a quorum still to do that, I believe. We can't conduct business without a quorum. So we'll want to make sure of that, but hopefully we've got enough notice to prepare for that.
And I would say we have 2 days there, assuming that we have 2 nights of, if it's only need for one night, it would just be one of those nights.
I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't the only, if I'm the only one, that's fine. I just want to make sure that there wasn't other people on that, so, okay.
I have no conflicts at this time, so I'll plan my year around it, I guess.
I was going to say, yeah, I build my life around this schedule, so anyway.
Write a song about that.
It's really, really depressing, isn't it?
Country song.
Yeah. Is there a motion from the council related to the proposed 2024 council meeting schedule? Moved by Councilmember Grau.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Etten. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have our 2024 meeting schedule. Thank you. All right, that brings us to consideration of city council minutes. We have meeting minutes from our October 16th council meeting as presented, and if there are any changes or corrections that need to be made to what has been presented to the council, this would be the time to do that. Otherwise, a motion to approve would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff to approve. Discussion on the motion. Councilmember Etten.
I'm going to abstain because I was conducting.
Okay, all right. We have the motion before us to approve those minutes from October 16th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Me.
That,
I don't know what else is. Yes.
yes, works, or me.
Me.
So that passes 4-0 with Councilmember Etten abstaining.
Doing something.
All right. That gets us then to a consideration of the consent agenda. I don't believe anything was removed from the consent agenda, so this will be about
There was
20
not, no.
20 minutes of conversation from Mr. Trudgeon going through all the items, starting now.
It is a long list. All right, so item 10A approves payments in the amount of $801,943.39. Item 10B approves one THC retail license for Total Wine. Item 10C approves the purchase of a new Bobcat skid steer for Public Works and a new aerator and green and tees mower for Cedar Home Golf Course. Item 10D adopts an ordinance establishing a reasonable accommodation policy pursuant to federal fair housing law to ensure persons with disabilities can be housed in Roseville's residential districts. Item 10E approves entering into an agreement with Ramsey County regarding the reconstruction of County Road B between Snelling Avenue and Lexington that will define what costs the county and the city will incur as part of the project. Item 10F takes action to not waive our statutory liability limits for 2024 and keeping the liability amounts currently in the state statutes. Not waiving our liability limits is consistent with past council decisions on this matter. Item 10G adopts a resolution approving the work as completed, starting the one-year warranty period, and authorize a final payment for the work done as part of the 2022 Villa Park Sedimentation Pond Improvement Project. Item 10H approves entering into a contract with Reach for Resources to provide city inclusion support services that will help the city in delivering its recreational programs to improve access to people for those programs that do have disabilities. The city began using Reach for Resources this year and has proven to be very beneficial to the city and Roseville residents. Item 10I authorizes entering into an agreement with the United States Department of Agriculture to conduct deer monitoring and reduction program for Roseville. Up to 49 deer may be removed as part of the program, similar to the program this year. Item 10J approves entering into a cooperative construction agreement with the city of Falcon Heights regarding the mill and overlay project on Roselawn Avenue between Snelling Avenue and Hamlin. The agreement will define what costs Roseville and Falcon Heights will incur as part of the project. Item 10J approves a resolution requesting funding from Ramsey County to assist in Roseville's recycling effort. This is called the SCORE funding. In 2023, the city received $88,000 in grant funds from the county to assist our recycling efforts. Item 10, I got that labeled wrong, don't I? What are we
We're up to L.
L, yeah, okay. Item 10L. The last item was 10K. I think I said 10J. 10L approves entering into an agreement with Roseville area schools to provide 2 full-time school resource officers, or SROs, for the district. One SRO will be at Roseville area high school. The other will be assigned at the Roseville area middle school and the district's elementary schools. For your information, the school district will be paying 2/3 of the city costs for the SROs that will be deployed in the schools. Item 10M approves a resolution to establish procedures to allow for the city to potentially seek reimbursement for any city project expenditures through the issuance of bonds. This resolution will only allow for the option to seek the issuance of bonding for projects that are already completed. The city council will still need to consider and approve any use of bonding before any bonds would be issued. Item 10N approves entering into an amendment to the professional services agreement for electrical inspection services conducted on behalf of the city. And then finally, 10O approves entering into a contract with North Suburban Access Corporation, or 9 North, to continue to provide video production services for city council and city commission meetings. And that is the consent agenda.
All right, now you can take a breath.
Yeah.
All right. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Strawn, second by Councilmember Breton. Any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Strawn.
A couple things. I did not know about Reach for the Resources. That is a great program. I'm really excited that we operate that. I've reached out to Department of Public Works to ask for minimum overlap between the construction on between Snelling and Hamlin on Roselawn, and that between County B between Snelling and Lexington, since those are 2 adjacent main thoroughfares in that area. And really looking at impact on some of the businesses, especially on the counter of Hamlin and B, who were impacted the last time this was happening. And kudos to the staff for keeping the SRO in the works. Had high compliments from the school board and the superintendent for the work that they've had interacting with you all, Pat, specifically on that project, and they're excited to move forward. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? would just note for members of the public that the statutory limits how much the city can be exposed in terms of if there is litigation against the city, and it's for the benefit of the taxpayer to put a limit on that, because otherwise there is no limit, and that potentially could expose taxpayers to a lot of dollars that would have to be potentially paid out. So that's a pretty easy decision to make, but I just thought I'd explain it a little more for folks that may be interested. With that, we have the motion before us to approve the consent items A through O. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those items are approved. Future agenda review, Mr. Trudgeon. Hopefully you've recovered from your last.
I have, yes. I haven't said a lot tonight, so that's easy. So we have 2 more meetings left in the year. 23 is almost over, so our next meeting is November 27th, which is the Monday after Thanksgiving. We'll, as was mentioned earlier, we'll have our public hearing for a city budget and levy for the public to come and weigh in on that. We do have a series of right-of-way vacations. This is kind of the second batch. We had a batch earlier this year. I think it's about 6 or 7 of them, and a little bit more detailed, so we may have to spend a little bit of time, some time on those, walking through those and hearing from the public. We also plan on having the Envision Roseville consultants come and provide the final report. It will be in your packet, but they'll also walk through a presentation, and would really encourage some feedback and conversation around that. I think that evening, we're just looking to receive it, and we do need to follow that up with a council conversation and staff conversation about what those next steps would be and what that would look like. So we'll plan for that in the future as well. We also, I did receive a formal request from the Roseville Area Youth Hockey Association to amend Chapter 304 lawful gambling. They would be looking to have change it from 3 to maybe 5. So I'm asking for some additional background information, and that'll be in front of you for conversation. I think if there's desire to pursue that, we would then draft that ordinance, but we want to have the conversation first. And then we would plan on bringing back the feedback we've received from the commissions about their scope, duties, and functions. Councilmember Atten and I met on Friday and kind of try to gather that information. So we'll try to organize that, but then it's really just a conversation with the council about where to go from there. And I don't know if Councilmember Atten wanted to add anything to that.
No.
Okay. And then on December 4th, as already mentioned, we'll do a lot of final approvals for the budget levy, the fee schedule, utility rates. We also will have a conversation about short-term rental regulations. We've been trying to get that on an agenda. It keeps getting pushed because of other things, but we do want to have that conversation. My understanding, the members of the HRIC will be present at that meeting as well to talk about their plan to work on city proclamations this year. I know they've been talking about focusing on a couple, and they want to provide some update. I don't know if it's about specific wording of any proclamations, but more just kind of an overview. And then also, I want to begin the conversations about our 2024 legislative priorities. We got some things knocked off the list, but there's always some other things around the corner and a lot that didn't get done still. So we want to check in with that. So start thinking about things that you're aware of that you want to bring forward, and we'll do that. I think, is the session started in February? Am I remembering that right?
Late January.
Late January, February. So we'll be able to come back in January also and polish that up. So I'm not going to go into 24 meetings at this point, so we'll just have these last 2 meetings. That's my update.
All right. Questions on the future agenda or any councilmember initiated items or reports or announcements? Councilmember Schroeder.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I had the privilege of attending the active shooter drill with the police and fire department. And I have to say, I continue to be impressed with our departments. Not only did they do a good job, but the other cities' departments were part of that, and the coordination behind that was amazing. And just watching this, it's so complex, and they were so professional, and they did a really good job. They even had people that were, you know, the victims that were shot and stuff, so they actually had to go in and treat it. I mean, they did it very detailed, and you know, you would hope that they would never need these skills ever, but that our departments are going to be prepared if we do need them is reassuring. And again, these guys were amazing, and I just wanted to, you know, give credit where credit's due with these guys. So that's it.
Guys and gals, right? All right. Any other announcements or reports?
I think
Councilmember Graf.
maybe help me out. Ramsey County rescheduled their opening
Oh, for the Environmental Resource Center that I kept announcing
Yeah, does
for
anyone-
the 26th. It
I'm
is
not gonna-
on the 14th.
14, okay.
At 3:30.
I thought I had
instead
it on
of
my
4
calendar
p.m.
and I didn't
Yep.
see it here.
No, I got the notice about it today, so
Thank you.
on Kent Street, just north of Larpenteur, on the 14th at 3:30.
Yep.
All right. If there's no further business before the city council, the only other item on our agenda is adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved enthusiastically by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember
Whatever her
Breton.
name is.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and we are adjourned at 8:52. Thank you.
Ooh.